Welcome into the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Got a very interesting show for you today, folks. You know, the John F. Kennedy assassination is a topic that you may think has been done over and over again. The topic of Oliver Stone and his interpretation of the John F. Kennedy assassination is one that you may think is an interesting one. The John F. Kennedy assassination and whether it is a conspiracy is an interesting one in that. I saw a figure at one time that 80% of America believes that there's a conspiracy behind the JFK assassination, which is a huge number. You know, I do a conspiracy theory talk when I am on the road, when I'm doing different paranormal conventions. And I do it with a bit of respect that we don't go down the rabbit hole. We try not to go down the rabbit hole. It's hard not to do, though. A lot of people like to get wound up in their conspiracies. I try to do it from a standpoint of, can we maintain our objectivity and responsibility? I try to have some accountability at the person who wants to embrace that conspiracy theory. So in other words, we don't go down the rabbit hole as much as we'd like to. We don't buy what they're selling. We don't necessarily say, you know what, I can see what they're saying because of this. We need 1 foot in reality. We need to see it for what it actually was, not what we hope it could be, or we need to look at why it is we're wanting to buy into an alternate theory as to what actually happened. So I was drawn to this book, Oliver Stone's Film-Flam, The Demagogue of Dealey Plaza. It's Fred Litwin's 4th book. And I'm interested in Fred Litwin because Fred Litwin, I guess you could say self-admittedly, was a JFK conspiracy theorist. But now has done a 180. He's not. In fact, if anything, he believes the story the way it happened, or the way that we're being told it happened. I have to ask him to be sure. Fred Litwin is our guest today. In 2020, he published On the Trail of Delusion, Jim Garrison, the Great Accuser, which chronicled Garrison's persecution of Clay Shaw. In 2018, he published I Was a Teenage JFK Conspiracy Freak, detailing his journey from believing in a JFK conspiracy at 18 to slowly moving to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone assassin. In 2015, he released Conservative Confidential about his move from left-wing anti-nuclear activist to Conservative Party campaigner. Let's welcome in to True Crime Tuesday, Fred Litwin. Fred, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be here, Tim. Nice to see you.
Great to see you, my friend. I'm intrigued about everything, about you, about this conspiracy in particular, because this is the conspiracy that sets the table for, I think, America and all conspiracy theories. And it sets our mindset as a country as to whether we're going to buy into, whether we trust government, whether we trust ourselves, I think, going forward. Because I think everyone looked at Camelot and they thought this is the last age in which we truly believe that we can trust our leaders and put our faith in America as our American government and America. And after that, we pull ourselves back and everything's very dark, very cynical. You had the assassinations of JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King. And it was after that period, at least as we're taught and told, and I think as we see it, we look at history and we go, you know what? After that, it was very dark. After that, you know, you had Watergate. After that, it seems like the country goes to hell in a handbasket and we never recover. Is that fair to say, Fred, or are we looking at things through a cynical glass at that point?
Well, we're very cynical, and we do have some good reason because of the Vietnam War and a whole variety of other things that happened in our politics and world affairs. So we are looking at it from a cynical perspective, but also we have to take a good look at particularly the JFK assassination. You know, why do so many people believe in conspiracy? And there were some bad actors right at the beginning who did a lot of work to really spread conspiracy theory around the country, and very, very successfully. People like Mark Lane, who was a bit of a charlatan, but was very, very good promoter and ran around the country convincing people. And that helped sour the mood. And but of course, the mood was already sour because of what was going on in Southeast Asia.
Let me ask you this current day question, because this current day question baffles me. And I'm trying to remember if I can pick the source, I will. At one point, the source was 80% of Americans believed that there was a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy Jr. Why so high? Why did so many people want to believe that it wasn't as simple as Lee Harvey Oswald shot from the conservatory and killed JFK Jr.?
Well, the numbers have varied. So when the Warren Report came out, most people believed in the single gunman theory, believed that Oswald was the lone gunman. And then you had Mark Lane going around the country, whipping up all this discontent. And of course, people started to believe in conspiracy. And ultimately, I say belief in conspiracy peaked with Oliver Stone's JFK in 1991, 1992. But since then, belief in conspiracy has gone down considerably, thanks to what I think is the internet. And I think the internet has played a big role in changing a lot of people's opinions, because for the first time, people who don't believe in conspiracy can fight back. I can argue with people on Facebook. I can actually post my side of the story. I can argue with people. I could show them the details, and that's changing people's opinions. And also, there are some very good books out now that are not conspiracy based. When I first started looking into the JFK assassination in 1975, there were only conspiracy books. That's all there were. There was no other options.
And why do you suppose there were only conspiracy books? Is there something sexy about putting out misinformation about this assassination?
One of my friends in Toronto had a publisher tell him that books that non-conspiracy books, let's say non-conspiracy books on the JFK assassination, the problem, they won't sell. And the reason they won't sell is that people who believe in conspiracy won't buy them. The people who don't believe in conspiracy don't need them and really aren't that interested. And so there's only a hardcore group of people who will buy, let's say, my books because people who think like me, I don't really need Fred's book because I already think that way.
But I as I sat and I paged through, I did more than page through your book this week, and I really was intent on wanting to know every single detail because I want to get it right. There's so much that's been put out there that doesn't seem to fit. We say conspiracy, yeah, and you throw out a bunch of conjecture and things that are kind of not even half truths, but things that are out there, and you go and you take it as fact. Well, of course this happened and that happened and this had to go this way, and it all has to make sense because it's been out there. These half truths and half facts have been out there for so long. We take it as fact now. So
yeah, I should look at Back and to the Left, the movement
yes,
of Kennedy's head after he was shot in the head. I mean, the fact his head moves back and to the left, and we've been conditioned for so long now of the whole phrase back and to the left, to believe that he was shot from the front, when in fact, when you really look into it, it's pretty clear that he was actually shot from behind, and that the movement of his head is actually consistent with that. In fact, his head moves forward from frame 312 to 313, and then it moves backward because of a neuromuscular spasm, et cetera, and that the movement of his head really is not indicative of a shot from the front.
Which, again, fascinating. I mean, and if you take and really study it, and a lot of the things in your book, if you take and you study it, you just go, oh, well, yeah, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you take and look at the actual documents, documents from inside the Warren Commission, you take and look at some of the communique between President Johnson and members of the Warren Commission, it's all very sensical. It all makes complete sense. And you would go, well, of course, why are we sitting here and making a mountain out of a molehill? But is it because we want there to be What's a good way of putting this, Fred? Do we want there to be more to this story? If Camelot was such a grandiose thing, do we want there to be a huge ending to such a larger-than-life president?
Well, we want to give meaning to his death. And it doesn't really mean something that he was killed by a 24-year-old Marxist who had trouble holding a job. You want to give it more meaning. And the great thing about the JFK assassination is that it can be used by anybody depending on your political point of view. So if you want to criticize the CIA, well, you can use the JFK assassination. Well, the CIA was behind it. If you were against the war in Vietnam, well, Kennedy had to be killed because he so-called wanted to get out of Vietnam. For conservatives, if you're against the deep state, well, the deep state is covering it up. It is the ground zero of conspiracy theories, and it can be used by both the left and the right for whatever purposes you want to use it for.
It's all fascinating stuff, and we're going to break down quite a bit of that here in this hour that we sit down and talk with you, Fred. But we'll do that here in a little bit. I want to get to you first. I want to talk a little bit about you and how you slowly let that worm turn from being someone who believed in this conspiracy theory to someone who had his eyes opened. Tell me a little bit about how you were first introduced to JFK and what your impressions of him were at first and in this case, and then how you were swept away by the conspiracy. What was it about it that you really did believe in the conspiracy at first?
Well, it was March 1975, it was a Thursday night, and I was watching Geraldo Rivera's show, Good Night America, and for the first time on national TV, he showed the Zapruder film. And I had never seen it, and the whole film was quite a shock. Again, it's that back and to the left motion of Kennedy's head, which seemed to indicate a shot from the front. And after I watched the show, I really had two questions. And the questions I had was, of course, I wanted to figure out what was going on with that shot to the head. But the second and more important thing I wanted to figure out was, why did that motion of his head not sway the Warren commissioners? Why did they conclude that he was shot from behind despite the Zapruder film? Mm-hmm. So I had to find the answer to these questions, and I went to the library, and it only had some conspiracy books, and Mark Lane's Rush to Judgment was there, and I read his book in like a day or two. But his book was written in 1966, and it was now 1975. So I had to bridge the gap, and I had 9 years, and I went to the periodical indexes and looked up all the Times and Newsweeks and other magazines to sort of find out what had happened in those 9 years. And what really caught my eye was that in 1972, JFK's autopsy, x-rays, and photographs were examined by two doctors, Dr. John Latimer in New York City and Dr. Cyril Wecht from Pittsburgh. And so I got their addresses, and I wrote them each a letter, and within 3 weeks, they both sent me a package of all their articles. So here was two people analyzing JFK's autopsy, x-rays, and photos, which actually had not been looked at by the Warren Commission. And Dr. Cyril Wecht, who is a believer in conspiracy and a renowned forensic pathologist, his analysis of the autopsy, x-rays, and photographs indicated that JFK was shot from behind.
Oh, wow.
That meant something to me. I mean, if the best forensic pathologist in the United States says that the autopsy materials prove that he was shot from behind, who might argue?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's good enough for me. And he clearly wasn't bothered by the backward movement of Kennedy's head. Now, he did have problems with the single bullet theory, which is the theory that one bullet went through Kennedy's neck and then went on to hit Governor Connolly. And I took that to be, okay, that's a really interesting point. Mm-hmm. But so that led me on the quest. And to say what turned me was the House Select Committee on Assassinations issued their report in 1978, and they concluded that Oswald fired 3 shots and from behind, and they sustained the single bullet theory. But I was a bit too busy. I was going off to MBA school at Queen's University at Kingston in Canada, and I decided I didn't have time for the JFK assassination, so I put it all aside. But in 1991, I was living in England, and somebody issued on CD-ROM all of the hearings and evidence of the House Select Committee on Assassinations. And I wanted to read it. I wanted to see why they sustained the single bullet theory. I wanted to read their medical evidence. And when I got it, I read it, I was absolutely stunned. And what really stunned me was that they did a lot of scientific testing. Medical, photographic, ballistics, firearms, you name it. They did the best scientific testing available at the time. And every test supported a lone gunman. And that had a big effect on me. And I began to turn.
Interesting indeed. So, Fred, I want to jump ahead a little bit here. When you first see Oliver Stone's JFK, having seen all this mountain of evidence for a lone gunman, 3 shots, you see the scientific evidence for the bullet, and you see everything there, and you go, well, of course it all makes sense. Did you go out and see JFK right away when Oliver Stone came out with that movie? And what were your thoughts?
I did. I couldn't wait to go see it. And I had 2 thoughts. I mean, I was absolutely blown away by the actors and actresses, the performances. You're seeing this all in front of you. You're seeing the motorcade and Ruby and Oswald and all of the other peripheral characters. And it's exquisite. I mean, it really is quite a piece of cinematic work. But I was horrified that the fact he used Jim Garrison as the protagonist, as the hero in this film, and he made Clay Shaw the victim. And that was absolutely sickening because I knew the true story of Jim Garrison. I knew that he had no case. I knew that Clay Shaw was an innocent gay man who was persecuted by Garrison and had his life ruined. And that really sickened me.
And to do it on such a huge scale. On top of it, I mean, that movie made so much money. Made a lot of money, and Clay Shaw, who had been victimized once in real life, was now being victimized a second time on film. Yeah, and tragic at that. So, as you sat and watched it, and saw what was essentially being, and the thing that was to me a little bit confusing too, Fred, is there was some press after this movie came out. It wasn't huge, but there was some press there that said, well, you have to keep in mind that Oliver Stone's, his how should I put this? His telling of events is a bit fictitious here, and we need to keep that in mind. And you would hear some media outlets say that. Even some reviewers would say, well, keep in mind, this is Oliver Stone's recollection of events. It's his telling of events. This isn't the way things happened. And you need to, take this with a grain of salt. But even as that's being put out there, people are lauding Stone initially for the first, I believe it was 12 weeks that the movie is out there. There's Oscar talk and whatnot as it's out there. But it dies down. Eventually everything dies down. It's not obviously the stuff that he had done earlier in his career, but it is what it is. And you would think that would be it. But then explain to you now this is why I wanted to have you on this program, because as I saw your book out there, I even did this as well. I went, he did something else with JFK? Explain to our audience that aren't familiar. Oliver Stone went back to the well with JFK.
Yeah, and I think, first off, I want to say one thing about the movie. Mm-hmm. Like other, Oliver Stone's purpose, I think, in making JFK the movie was, again, to use the assassination as a tool to get people to talk about Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Vietnam was very close and personal to Oliver Stone, and he thought, okay, this is a good vehicle for me to use. I'll do this. People will talk about Vietnam. And what happened was they didn't. They talked about the minutia in the film, the angles, the bullets, the wounds. Why is this? Why is that? And he had to spend a whole year going around to the press, sort of defending all of this minutia that I don't really think he had that big an interest. It was more about Vietnam. So that, I think, was a disappointment to Oliver Stone.
Well,
we come back.
Don't you think? Well, I want to open up a little bit of a can of worms there too, Fred. Don't you think people got more focused not just on that, but do you think they got more focused on opening up more on the conspiracy? That they talked more about Did the mob really kill JFK? And didn't the conspiracy itself get more blown open rather than it really did take the focus off of Vietnam. But
clearly, belief in conspiracy peaked after JFK, and he was very successful in that. And of course, he was also successful in getting the creation of the Assassination Records Review Board to actually release documents. And there was a lot of interest in the whole assassination after the film. But I think Oliver Stone himself was disappointed that he didn't get to really people to really get his point about Vietnam as much as he would like. Well, now you fast forward to last year, and he really had an opportunity or took an opportunity to say, well, I want to go back to this and make a documentary series, JFK Revisited, a relook at JFK, to sort of tell people, hey, I had it right all along. And number two, it really was about Vietnam and foreign policy. Pay attention. And I think that he wanted to really reiterate his points again through a new vehicle.
Okay, but it could be argued that if you really wanted to, and this is where we can start to kind of break things down, if you want to argue that JFK was killed over foreign policy, there was other foreign policy you could have killed John F. Kennedy over. And I don't think Vietnam would have been the first thing. Do you?
Well, he wasn't killed over Vietnam, and he wasn't killed over his foreign policy. That's all nonsense. But I think it allows people like Oliver Stone to make the case that there's something fundamentally wrong with American foreign policy today, and it's because of the assassination. And so again, he's using the assassination to make a point about politics today that he does not like. Again, it's just exploiting the assassination.
Which, it in its own right is absolutely wrong. But it's to me it's just that it's taking a roundabout way to make a statement. There are other ways to make other movies to make that statement if you want to make it. There's other vehicles.
Absolutely, you could, and I think you could, but I think in a certain sense, using the JFK assassination gets people's interest. It actually gets them interested. It gets, and so there's it sort of makes sense. You could look at right now at let's say the controversy of Tucker Carlson at Fox News. All of a sudden he started talking about conspiracy with the JFK assassination, and, it gets traction. Oh, people are interested. And you could use that to make your point about the deep state, and something's mysteriously going on. So again, it's just a matter, it's an easy thing to exploit, and people do have an interest in the topic.
Let me ask you this, Fred. Before we go any further, do you, with everything that you've done as far as looking into JFK, do you believe that there is such a thing as deep state out there?
No, I don't think there is a deep state out there. And there obviously are national security organizations in Canada and the US and the UK, but there's no real deep state that's malignant and out of control. I don't believe that.
Do you believe that, besides what's been reported, because there has been some abuses reported in the media by obviously by different departments within the US and other governments within the world, you hear about certain abuses reported. Do you believe that there are some unreported abuses that go deeper than just the surface? Like let's say, I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
Right now in the United States, we're dealing with, you're aware of the UFO controversy, and they're doing the AARO meetings right now, the AARO meetings. And the big topic right now is whether UAPs actually exist. Is our government actually withholding things as far as disclosure, things like that? Do you believe that there's maybe one section of the government that isn't telling another section of the government what's actually going on, things like that? The Defense Department is holding back certain things from the American public, but they do know something, but they're kind of glad-handing, or the American public are saying, oh, no, please tell us the things that you know are going on, but they're kind of, ha over here, and but they actually have records and know things are going on?
No, I don't.
No. Okay.
Obviously, there are secrets that are being kept about national security issues that have to be kept secret. But by and large, there's too many people who would speak and who would talk and who would leak that it's hard to keep big things secret. I should say, that if you look at, let's say, Tucker Carlson talking about, let's say, the FBI and that recent Durham report about the FBI not being too keen to investigate Donald Trump. There's some horrible stuff in there, but yeah, we've had a history of horrible stuff going on at the FBI right back to J. Edgar Hoover. And so there is, of course, no shortage of scandals and issues with the CIA and the FBI and in Canada, the RCMP and a whole variety of agencies who obviously sometimes do bad things.
Yeah, and absolutely. And they do. The interesting thing is they all do eventually come to light. And I think that's what people fail to understand is that corruption can happen for a time, but eventually something comes to light. Someone always whistleblows. There's always someone there who manages to get that information out. And once it comes out, it comes to the surface.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. What's interesting about your book is you start to unravel throughout Oliver Stone's, and you do it with this. In the name of the book, by the way, folks, Oliver Stone's Film-Flam, the Demagogue of Dealey Plaza, which we have a link in the description of this program, so you can go ahead and order that book. You start to follow his. Is it, for lack of a better term, is it a mini series? Is it
when he made this documentary series, it started off as a 2-hour film.
Okay.
Or I'm not even sure. It may have been 3 hours. The problem was he was trying to make this film, and it was a 2-hour film, or actually I think it was a 3-hour film. The problem here was he couldn't sell it. So he was making this film and he wanted to sell it to Netflix or National Geographic or some other big streaming company, and he couldn't sell it. And he had to go back and make it into a smaller 2-hour version.
Okay.
And so he did that, and he couldn't sell that either, and he had to go to Cannes to sell this JFK stuff. He eventually sold the 2-hour version to Showtime. They showed it in the United States and Canada. And then he also came out with a 4-hour version of the same documentary. So there's 2 versions of this documentary series. Nobody bought the 4-hour version, so he had to put it up on a digital sale on various platforms.
Okay. Which I find fascinating too. I want to talk to you a little bit about that first. Netflix turns it down. They say basically there's nothing really here that's factual that we can sink our teeth into, that we can actually put out there, which is pretty hard because Netflix puts a lot of stuff out there. I'm not saying that they put anything non-factual out there, but what I'm saying is Netflix doesn't turn a lot of stuff down.
Yeah, and I don't know, all I know is what Oliver Stone has told us in some interviews where he said that with Netflix and National Geographic, they had problems with the fact checkers. So I don't know exactly what went on with Netflix per se, but obviously people were noticing that there was some stuff that they felt was not factual enough, and perhaps decided, the last thing we want is another brouhaha with Oliver Stone, so let's avoid it.
Now, it's not like he just put this thing together and there's not star power behind it either. I mean, there's like Whoopi Goldberg in this thing, and there's Donald Sutherland. I mean, there's some pretty big names in this thing. So it's got star power. It's got a big feel to it. It's not like this is kind of a rinky-dink project that he's put together, correct?
No, not at all. I mean, it's amazing. The music, the cinematography, it's another incredible production. Unfortunately, Oliver Stone used James D'Eugenio as a screenwriter. James D'Eugenio is a conspiracy theorist who has some wacky theories. But Oliver Stone he's got Oliver Stone's ear, and Oliver Stone gave him free rein to write this screenplay.
Why take the chance of using James on this if he's got an agenda, so to speak? If he's got this agenda to try to push this forward again, why take the chance of using someone who's somewhat sketchy to do so?
Well, I don't know how much Oliver Stone really knows about the assassination. I think that he's a man who is very relies on other people to sort of tell him what's going on there, and he's become friends with Diogenio, and Diogenio has been very, very adamant that Kennedy's foreign policy, all of it, not just Vietnam, but all of his foreign policy, was the reason why he was killed. And I think Oliver Stone liked that and decided, you know what, I'm going to get back at my critics. They didn't like, they pillared me. They pillared me for JFK. I'm going to get back with a new documentary series to prove that I was right all along.
There's a lot of conjecture about the dealings with Kennedy and the CIA, which is very interesting. The fact that they make it seem like Kennedy and the CIA are at complete odds with each other, and nothing could be further than the truth. Correct?
Yeah, I think that, they're trying to make the CIA a boogeyman that was partially responsible for his death, and of course they really like to place the blame on Allen Dulles. Look, there was a huge problem, of course, with the Bay of Pigs. The CIA had its issues there. JFK had his personal issues there as well. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I say in my book, which is really clear, is that both Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy decided they liked covert operations. They really had a thing. They wanted more covert operations, both within the CIA and within the Defense Department. And of course, they were the ones that came up with Operation Mongoose to do a whole variety of sabotage on Castro's Cuba. So to say that they were at odds with the CIA was like, well, they had some issues with the Bay of Pigs, but they realized the importance of using covert operations for their political goals.
There's a fascinating chapter where you're talking about just the miscommunication of everything with the CIA and Charles de Gaulle and that era of Kennedy's administration, which is just bordering on hilarious, and how badly Oliver Stone's people get it wrong.
Yeah, well, they try to make the claim that the CIA was helping some French generals with a coup against Charles de Gaulle in the early 1960s. This revolves around Algeria. Mm-hmm. And of course, I really didn't know much about this until I started researching it and found out that, in fact, it was just the opposite that really got the French angry at the United States, was the fact that the CIA was helping some of the people involved in Algeria who were revolting or who were going for independence. The documentary has the whole thing wrong. There was no CIA complicity in the coup at all.
That's crazy. And so obviously there would be a reason why National Geographic and Netflix would have a problem with this if they were to put this on their network, put it out, and even try to distribute this and have people watch it. Obviously it's factually inaccurate to a point of absurdity.
Well, yeah, and it would put them in the position of trying to defend it. Yeah, and I think they decided, well, look, we'd rather not have this headache. Thank you very much. We've got bigger things to do. You go do it yourself. And it reflects the fact that, Netflix is pretty big. And so if they had put this documentary series on Netflix, it would have an impact.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Fred, I tell you what, we're going to take our break here. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about evidence in general, physical evidence when it comes to the death of President Kennedy and how they start to get things really, really wrong. In fact, we'll talk a little bit about President Kennedy's own physician and things such as that. And ultimately, what happens with this, we'll call it a movie of Oliver Stone's, and what do we do with this now? What do we do with this information now that it's out there? And how do we take it now? What do we do with this information, and what should we do with this information? Our guest is Fred Litwin. The name of the book is Oliver Stone's Film-Flam, The Demagogue of Dealey Plaza. Fred Litwin is our guest. The book itself, we have a link to it in the description of this program. I encourage you to pick it up, folks. Again, if you think that there's a conspiracy when it comes to JFK, I want you to think twice about it and pick up this book of Fred's and really dig into it. There's lots of interesting documents, copies of documents for you to read that'll really change your mind. I know a lot of people who say, yeah, but Lee Harvey Oswald this and Jack Ruby that. And boy, I'll tell you, Fred has really done his research, and there's a lot of interesting things for you to read in this book. So go ahead and pick it up right now. Oliver Stone's Film-Flam, The Demagogue of Dealey Plaza is the name of the book. There's a link in the description of this program. Check it out during the break. When we come back, more with Fred here on The Best in True Crime Podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. Welcome back to The Best in True Crime Podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Our guest is Fred Litwin. The book is Oliver Stone's Film-Flam, The Demagogue of Dealey Plaza. We are talking the JFK conspiracy, the assassination conspiracy, and whether there's any conspiracy whatsoever. Did it happen exactly as we've been told it's been happening by the Warren Commission? And Fred has done a lot of research when it comes to this exact topic that we're talking about right now. The book is incredibly informative, folks. There's a lot of documentation, a lot of documents that have been reproduced in this book that you can sit down and see for yourself, and is incredibly eye-opening. A lot of stuff that I had never seen that was reproduced, and you can see for yourself. Some of those documents that really opened my eyes, Fred, when I sat down to read the book, had to do with the actual autopsy of President Kennedy. And a lot of things that are misconstrued when it comes to President Kennedy, a lot of things that we think, a lot of stories we think we thought we heard, and some interesting facts about witness recollection. I want to talk about this with you because a lot of people say, well, if that person was there on scene, if that person was there with President Kennedy in the hospital, and saw what they saw when at the time that they were trying to work on him, trying to keep him alive, or at the time where they declared his death, or the time where they were trying to keep him alive, or they knew what they saw. Maybe they saw cerebellum tissue hanging out of his head, or maybe they saw certain things that they saw. They knew what they saw, Fred. They knew what they saw. They had to have seen pieces of his brain matter hanging out of his head. There had to be certain things they saw that proved that maybe the entry wound was in his neck. It was an entry wound, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Oh. It's all very interesting because, look, when Kennedy was shot, he was rushed to Parkland Hospital. All these doctors rushed into the emergency room. You had like 20, 30 people in the room. They had 15 minutes trying to resuscitate him. They were not there to examine the wounds. They were not there to do an autopsy. His head, he had a wound over here. And of course, this head was a mess of blood, hair, skull fractures. And so, of course, afterwards, after those quick 15 minutes, doctors went out and, yes, they wrote reports and they saw things. And of course, human memory, particularly these doctors and other witnesses who were interviewed 30 years later, remember things that perhaps didn't happen. Memory is a very, very pliable thing, and it's something that conspiracy theorists never really want to talk about. Just to give you one example, I mean, Dr. McClellan, one of the doctors at Parkland, immediately afterwards wrote a report saying that Kennedy was hit in the left temple, which was completely not true, but that was his immediate recollection after coming back from the emergency room.
Yeah. So
a lot of these witnesses got it wrong, not surprisingly, because these are very, very quick memories. And if you read the Assassination Records Review Board, their final report, they actually have a whole page where they talk about the issue of memory. Mm-hmm. And the ARRB did a lot of work on the medical evidence. They interviewed nurses, doctors, technicians, anybody who was there. And they said, you got to be careful with this testimony because any one person can bolster your theory, but then you'll find somebody else who disagrees. So you got to be very, very careful. The only thing worse than 30-year memories or 40-year memories, something like that. But yeah. The point is that memories fade over time and they're not totally reliable.
And that's a dangerous thing. We're coming up on 60 years this year. away from the assassination. We're getting to the point where there are probably less people alive now than there were at the time that it happened. And as we get further away from the event, things can be misconstrued. Conspiracy theory becomes more fact than it became theory. And I think, the facts become more diluted, than when it first happened. I mean, my fear is
and that's why I tend to rely on the autopsy, X-rays, and photographs. Mm-hmm. There's some hard physical evidence that we have from the autopsy, which actually can tell us what happened. And this is why conspiracy theorists try their best to impeach the autopsy, X-rays, and photographs because they do not support a second gunman.
Right. There's some things out there, some crazy rumors that you address in the book, which, thank God you do. Stuff like JFK's brain was substituted,
This is a very important factoid for conspiracy theorists because the left side of JFK's brain was intact, which told you that he could not have been shot from the front. If he had been shot from the front, it would have gone right through into the left part of his brain. And so conspiracy theorists are now forced to argue that the photographs of Kennedy's brain are actually of somebody else's brain. And they've come up with a variety of reasons why that is so. For instance, they claim that the weight of Kennedy's brain is too heavy. The autopsy doctors weighed Kennedy's brain. It was 1,500 grams. And of course, normal male brain is 1,325 grams. Mm-hmm. Why is Kennedy's brain so heavy, considering that a part of it was blasted away? Well, the answer is that the brain was weighed after it had been immersed in formaldehyde. That adds weight to the brain. Mm-hmm. And after a trauma like a bullet wound, there is swelling of the brain as well. And of course, Kennedy might have had an above average brain to begin with. And so when you add up all those factors, the weight of the brain is not really an issue.
You also get things like the photographer who was taking photographs of the autopsy is easily confused because he can't remember what type of...
Yeah, that's a good point. John Stringer was the official photographer of the autopsy, and the AARB interviewed him in 1997 or 96. I mean, it's over 30 years later. And you could read his interview. He had trouble remembering. He didn't remember what kind of film he was using. He didn't remember what pictures he told. He just, over and over again in his testimony, so I can't remember. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so when he was shown a photograph of Kennedy's brain, he said, well, I'm not sure if I took that picture or not. And but if I did, I did, and he just didn't remember.
And it's these things that are normal human functions. Over time, we things become muddied. We don't really necessarily, let me do that again, don't necessarily remember minute details that conspiracy theorists will jump on and say, well, he doesn't remember because he doesn't remember his lie. He doesn't remember what it is he's manufacturing. It's because they got to him. They got to him, Fred. They got to him. Well, it's not that
clearly they got to him. I mean, it's just laughable. And then of course you have testimony closer to the date of the assassination, where in fact he actually authenticated the photographs in 1966, including the photographs of the brain.
Yeah. The one that really is very interesting, the one that people kind of shirk at a little bit that I wanted to talk to you about. JFK's Dr. Admiral Berkeley talks about, and I'm trying to remember the exact quote. It had something to do with having actually, in order to figure out if there was a second bullet or not, you would have actually, and I know I'm not quoting this correctly, you would have to actually, dissect the brain to figure out if there were two bullets? Is that the quote?
Section the brain, yes.
Section the brain.
Section the brain.
Yes, yeah. And that's the one that gets people all in a tizzy, saying, well, you're saying there might be a second bullet? Which is not the way he meant for it to come off. Is that correct?
Well, Berkeley was at Parkland Hospital when the doctors were trying to resuscitate Kennedy, and he was also at the autopsy at Bethesda. So he saw Kennedy both being tended to and then at the autopsy. And what makes this whole story really weird is that, like a lot of witnesses in this case, sometimes you start reading conspiracy books. And at some point, Admiral Berkeley, I guess, was reading some conspiracy books, and he told the conspiracy author that he thought there was a conspiracy. Well, if you're hearing that from JFK's doctor, your immediate thought is it must be related to the medical evidence, to the nature of the wounds, perhaps a second gunman. And in fact, as I show in my book, that was not the case. That Berkeley's belief in a conspiracy was only because he thought maybe Oswald had too much money. It had nothing to do with the medical evidence at all. Mm-hmm. And you will not see that in Oliver Stone's documentary series.
Interesting. So where do you think he got the money from?
Well, he was wrong. I mean, Oswald had enough money to do all this stuff.
Yeah,
he was a voracious saver of money. He didn't spend that much money. He didn't make much, but he didn't spend much.
Right. Huh. Interesting. We had, I can't remember her name right now. I meant to bring it up. I meant to look this up before you were on the program. His supposed mistress, Lee Harvey Oswald's supposed mistress. We had her.
Oh, Judith Baker?
Yes,
Baker?
We had Judith on the program. I wanted to get your opinion of her and what you thought of her. I don't know that I bought.
There's absolutely no truth. She was not Lee Harvey Oswald's mistress. I mean, this is just not true, and it's shame on her for trying to tell people that, and shame on people for believing it. There's just no truth to any of that at all.
I didn't buy what she was selling when we had her on the program. I didn't. My co-host at the time did. I didn't. There was something about her that didn't seem right to me. But
the only thing we know for sure is that she worked at Riley Coffee back in the summer of 1963 at the same time that Oswald worked at Riley Coffee. But that's all we know. She can't prove anything else. And that's not enough to say that they had a relationship or even knew each other.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What do you think the true relationship, because we hear different things as far as the conspiracy goes between Ruby and Oswald. What do you believe the true relationship is between Ruby and Oswald?
There was no relationship between Ruby and Oswald. They did not know each other. It was an impulsive act by Ruby on Sunday morning. He was completely distraught over the murder of Kennedy. But he was also very, very distraught over the ad that appeared in the Dallas Morning News on that Friday morning. A big ad criticizing Kennedy, signed at the bottom of the ad by a Bernard Weissman, a Jewish-sounding name. And Ruby was Jewish, and he was very, very, very he was very aware of anti-Semitism and very did not like anti-Semites, needless to say. Mm-hmm. But he thought something was wrong here. Why was this Jewish man putting this ad in? And then Kennedy was killed. He thought maybe there was a relationship between that ad and the assassination. He actually went to the post office box to actually see if he could get information on Bernard Weissman. They wouldn't tell him. At the same time, there were billboards around Dallas calling for the impeachment of Earl Warren with a post office box as well. And he thought maybe there was an association between the two, the ad and the impeach Earl Warren signs. And that started to make him go a little nuts. He even thought that the black border around the ad was indicative of death. And all of this backfired on Jack Ruby because he killed Oswald. He thought he was going to be a hero. And then, in fact, the extreme right, the John Birch Society and other right-wingers said, well, because Jack Ruby's Jewish, maybe he was part of a conspiracy to kill Kennedy. The Jews killed Kennedy. And that caused Ruby to go completely over the bend and started thinking that there might be a second Holocaust because of Jewish involvement in the assassination.
Wow. Now, see, that's a conspiracy. Wow.
Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. In 1965, he was being examined by a psychiatrist for his appeal. And the psychiatrist asked him if there was a conspiracy in the JFK assassination. And Ruby said yes. And the psychiatrist said, well, what was it? He said, hold on. And the next day, when the psychiatrist came back, Ruby gave him a conspiracy book, the conspiracy book by Thomas Buchanan. He was reading conspiracy books. That's where he got that from.
Oh, my God. You ever get the feeling conspiracies can't do any good?
Well, the funny part is, of course, if you take one real conspiracy, the fact that Al-Qaeda conspired to bring down the World Trade Center, there's a lot of people who don't like that conspiracy.
Well, yeah, that's not.
They don't want to believe in that one.
That's not a very good conspiracy at all, there, Fred. It's funny, Fred. There's only a few provable conspiracies that I can think of. I mean, but yeah, there's is there a conspiracy that you could, I mean, you just named one, but
yeah,
are there any provable conspiracies out there that
well, there's conspiracies all around. I mean, the Japanese conspired to bomb Pearl Harbor.
True.
I mean, my God, there you go. I mean, this sort of people, countries, the governments, militaries conspire to attack and do damage. And so that sort of stuff happens all the time.
Very true. Very true. With what you've put out here, and I don't want to get too deep into the book because, again, I want to encourage people to read this book. There's an amazing amount of information that you put out here. The Warren Commission in itself, I do want to bring out one dynamic in the Warren Commission, which I find is absolutely astounding. One of the things that Oliver Stone and his group one of the people they try to demonize is Alan Dulles. They want to try to lead you to believe that the Kennedys, both Robert and Jack, had a problem with Alan Dulles, and that he was kind of the person that if Robert and Jack were trying to bring down the CIA, and as I believe, as you put it, the famous religious quote is to how did you put it, to shred it and scatter it to the winds?
Yeah, 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds.
Yep, and scatter it to the winds. That Dulles was the one that essentially was going to go with it. Or, he was the main villain supposedly in this whole deal, and that of all people that they didn't want on the Warren Commission, he would have been the one, which was the furthest thing from the truth. It was Robert Kennedy that really wanted Dulles on the Warren Commission, correct?
Yeah, Robert Kennedy asked Johnson to put Dulles on the Warren Commission, and I think he wanted Dulles on the Warren Commission to keep some of those CIA secrets from the commission, particularly the attempts to kill Castro by the CIA and the mob. And so a better person to make sure that those secrets did not come out than Alan Dulles. Now,
it's easy for us to throw a line like that out there, but where's the proof when it comes time for the Warren Commission to actually release this report? Who's to say that Dulles is going to do the stand-up thing and not put some of those things out there? Is it just duty to country, or is it the fact that because Dulles really doesn't owe anything to Robert Kennedy?
No, he doesn't. But I think that there was a very good relationship between the Kennedys and Dulles, and I think that Dulles had no intention. Clearly, I mean, he did not want this information to come out because it would reflect badly on him and the CIA. And I think he didn't want to damage the Kennedys and certainly Robert Kennedy. And I think he understood, okay, this is something we'll keep secret. It's not going to come out. Now, of course, the CIA, under McCone, went along with that. They weren't going to tell that anyways. That was too important a secret. But that secret had to be kept. That was a very, very damaging secret.
And I get it. It's a different time as well. Nowadays, there's no political loyalty. Nowadays, that's fair game. It seems like sabotage is the game of the day when it comes to politics. And, it seems like if you can hang somebody, you would, when it comes to information like that.
I'll tell you one thing I really don't understand. If the CIA or the FBI wanted to get rid of Kennedy, they could have leaked details of his affairs with various women. And that would have really, at that point in the early 60s, that would have been a very serious matter. And that would have really damaged him at various point in the campaign.
Sure.
But they didn't.
Right. Which, yeah, you bring up a very good point there as well.
Hoover. Look, Hoover knew about Kennedy's trysts with Judith Exner, who was, the girlfriend of Sam Giancana. What did Hoover do? He actually met with Robert Kennedy and said, "Hey, knock this stuff off. Don't do this."
Yeah.
He didn't leak it.
Yeah. And again, excellent point in the fact that they really did watch after one another in kind of an odd way, but yeah, they were watching after each other more than they were trying to sabotage each other. So it's interesting. It's interesting stuff nonetheless. So to say that Kennedy's trying to whether it be Jack or Robert in whatever time frame we're talking about, whether it be Warren Commission or pre-Warren Commission and pre-assassination, Jack or Robert, either one, it seems are looking out for either Dulles or whether it be Hoover, whoever. If they're within the government, it seems like they're keeping secrets for one another.
Yeah. And also I should say that if you really wanted to change policy, you could do more than just get rid of Kennedy and have Johnson. You really wouldn't know what Johnson would do, but Goldwater would be much more of a hawk.
Oh yeah,
than Johnson. So why would you not have a plot that would have hurt Kennedy to get Goldwater in? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and yeah. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You could make a king wherever you wanted to and however you wanted to, very easily in that day and time, and maneuvered things however you wanted to in that day and time. And it wouldn't have necessarily had to have been Johnson. Johnson would have been the last person I would have thought that you would have moved into that position. But you're right. Goldwater would have been probably the first one, because he was I don't want to say he was the least electable. It wasn't that way. But yeah, if you would have wanted to move somebody into position very quickly, that would have been the person to move. You're absolutely right there, Fred. There was one other point I wanted to make as far as that went, as far as the machinations there, and it was not only with Dulles, but it was the point escapes me. But it was very interesting when it came to the CIA. Budgets. That's what it was. Budgets. So the other thing that they kind of grasp onto when it comes to Oliver, I think was it the Oliver Stone part of things, was that the CIA, I think, was being defunded. Was that part of it?
Well, you have this sort of, on the one hand, we're going to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces scattered to the wind. Mm-hmm. And then in the next breath, the documentary says, they cut the CIA's budget by 20%, which sort of, hold it, there's a disconnect there,
Yeah.
And in fact, there was a bit of cutting of the CIA budget, but largely because they transferred some of that stuff to the Defense Department.
And reassigned duties, right?
Yeah.
Which really is not defunding at all. It's just transfer.
No, so he really didn't do it. And so the whole documentary just doesn't get it right.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're coming up on the end of our program here, Fred. Well, I want to ask you this question. When it comes to what it is that I don't want to call it a great big nothing burger, but Oliver Stone has put out this second attempt now to try and advance an agenda that he's trying to advance here. And to me, it's kind of like, well, what is it you're trying to advance here? Other than the Vietnam agenda, what is it you feel that Oliver Stone's trying to advance here?
Well, I think he's truly trying to say that our current politics are corrupt and wrong. Our foreign policy is wrong. Our foreign policy is militaristic, and it all stems from the JFK assassination. So again, he's trying to make a statement about today's politics using the assassination, and he just does not succeed. Not that many people saw this documentary series. It will be very, very soon. It'll be forgotten. And too bad for him. I think that's his last kick of the can.
Okay, so to argue it from a devil's advocate standpoint,
yeah, sure.
Isn't most of the top third of most reigning and ruling countries in the world militaristic? I mean, as far as policy goes, I mean, if you're dealing with many superpowers, or the most, whatever you want to consider a superpower on Earth.
Well, I'll just make this very, very quick point that we used to live in a world that was America. We had the two superpowers. Mm-hmm. Then we were living in a unipolar world with America as the only superpower. I would say we're not better off now that we have a multipolar world with Russia and China, mm-hmm. two states that are basically ruled by criminals, mm-hmm. thugs. Mm-hmm. Who have a malignant effect on world politics. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a Canadian. I sit here as a Canadian, and I say, that with all its faults, America is the one great hope, the one country that actually stands for freedom and human rights, however flawed, whereas the Chinese and the Russians don't. And so I want a strong United States out there to lead the way towards freedom and democracy, hopefully.
Yeah. If anything, you're right. If anything, as other countries are starting to grow in power, they're not growing as far as democracy goes. So,
no. In fact, China has gone the other way. They have actually learned they can export their illiberalism to other countries rather than import our democracy.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's where things stand. So. Again, this is just speculation, playing a little bit of a what if game. What do you do if you're Oliver Stone now? You've put this out, it's landed, and it's done nothing. So, what's your next move? I mean, well,
that's why he's moved on. His current documentary is about nuclear power, and I would assume he'll go on to do other projects. He hasn't done a major motion picture in many, many, many years. I mean, nobody's going to give him money for any major pictures, so he'll do minor documentaries until he can no longer do it.
We're now, as I mentioned earlier in the program, we're at 60 years since the assassination. It is going to come up in news media now as we get closer to the November 22nd date. How do you feel the media handles this now?
I think the media will have, I think we're going to see a lot of stuff in the media for the 60th anniversary. I think it'll all be pretty good. I think the media, again, there's mixed feelings out there. I mean, you have Tucker Carlson at Fox going on about a conspiracy with the deep state. I hope that's sort of a one-off and doesn't really sort of goes away. The fact is, I think the media understand there was no conspiracy. And there was only a lone gunman, and there's really nothing there. And you could fight all you want about more documents coming out, but nothing that has ever released changes anything.
Do you think that there's a re-examination of the Warren Commission at all?
No. We've done that. We did it with House Select Committee on Assassinations. We've had the Assassination Record Review Board release millions of pages of documents. There's a few documents left to be released in terms of redactions, but nothing about the assassination per se. We know everything we need to know about the assassination. It's all out there.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts you have before we wrap up today?
Well, I'm hoping that anybody who's watching this, if you want to come out and meet me, I'll be in Dallas for the 60th anniversary with a bunch of my friends. So if you want to come out and say hello, I'll be there. And I go to Dallas once a year with my JFK buddies to go around to all the various sites and discuss the case. So if you want to meet me, I'll be there.
Sounds good. We have a link to the book here on this program, in the description of this program. I encourage you to pick it up. Again, a fascinating book and lots of great information there. Again, folks, if you're sitting on the fence, if you're thinking that maybe you're still thinking there's somewhat of a conspiracy when it comes to this case, I encourage you to pick up this book and really read the facts and read some of the documentation that Fred has put in this book. It's fascinating, folks. Some of the documentation when it comes to even the documentation between some of the members of the Warren Commission. It's called Oliver Stone's Film-Flam, the Demagogue of Dealey Plaza. Fred Litwin is our guest and the author of this particular book. Fred, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It was great being here.
It was a pleasure to have you, my friend. I appreciate you being with us. Folks, it's time for us to lighten things up a little bit. It's time for us to bring in Beer City Bruiser, and it's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals.
It's Crayon News story time.
What happened with this dude, Christ Bearer? I heard he cut his penis off and then jumped off a balcony.
Suspect pulls gun from butt, shoots twice at Denver police.
What is your emergency?
I need help.
And what's the problem?
I'm too high.
You're too high?
Yeah.
It's that time you've all been looking forward to here on True Crime Tuesday. It's time for Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. And with that, we need a co-host. We bring in the co-host with the most, the BCB, the big cuddly bear himself, Beer City Bruiser. Bruiser, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Cruiser. I'm actually in a really good mood. I've got a real quick, funny story for you.
Yeah, sure.
So today's we record these is pretty busy for both of us, so I got to get my gym time in early in the morning because I train the youth of professional wrestling at night and record with you during the day. So I have a weird playlist on my headphones.
Yeah.
And do you know the song Goodbye Horses?
Yeah.
By Lazarus.
Yeah, that's Jimmy Jacobs' theme.
Yeah, well, that's on my headphones, and I was doing a set. My headphones popped out, and so the people around me could hear, and I apologized. And the guy next to me goes, "No, it's fine." He proceeds to put his arms out to his side.
No.
And start doing the Silence of the Lambs dance. And I was like, "Yes, sir, you and I can be friends."
Oh. Would you do me, Bruiser? I'd do me.
So it was just a treasure that will never go away.
You made a new friend, Bruiser. You made a new friend.
Back in the day, Lenny Lane, that was his entrance music. And Mrs. Bruiser was doing music one day. And we're at the show, and it's like on the border of Wisconsin. I want to say it's like Hudson. So Wisconsin, Minnesota, you know where I'm at.
Yeah.
And Lenny comes out for his music. And Mrs. Bruiser, who had never seen the movie,
No.
text me, "You need to come here now." And I come running down. I'm like, "What's the matter?" She goes, "Look." I says, "Yeah." She goes, "There's over 400 men all standing up right now doing this pose." I went, "I'll show you the movie when we get home." And I did. And she just looked and went, "You guys are weird."
And she was alarmed.
So yeah, that was my fun little moment while I'm in a giddy mood today, because Goodbye Horses transcends all.
It does, yeah. It's only a song that we the weird can absolutely just enjoy together and ask each other if we do each other. I guess I have no idea. That indeed. And with that, we're going to get into Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. And we may be asking ourselves that question by the end of the program, by the way. There is a question of that, of one nun to a priest.
See, I figured it'd tie in somehow.
It does, yeah. It does eventually here at the end of the program. So, yeah, good tie-in, Bruiser. Good tie-in. Let's start off with this. Okay, this is not a funny story.
Okay.
But someone is going to laugh at this out there.
Probably us.
No. I'm not going to. No, in fact, this is, to me, a very tragic story. I'm going to double dog dare you not to laugh, though.
Okay.
If you do, you're a horrible human being, Bruiser. But I'm going to double...
I have a weird sense of humor. You know that. That's why we get along.
I know. I'm going to double, triple dog dare you not to laugh at this. You ready?
Yep.
We're going to Australia, where a 95-year-old great-grandmother was tasered by an officer in Australia. She had a walking frame or a walker and a knife, according to police. Allow me to read this very slowly. We go to Brisbane, where homicide detectives in Australia are investigating why a police officer felt so that, by the way, this is dumb cops stupid officers is what we're calling this. Here we go. Homicide detectives in Australia are investigating why a police officer felt so threatened by a 95-year-old woman clutching a walker and steak knife that he needed to taser her inside her nursing home.
Oh, he was in the nursing home, huh?
Yes, it was in the nursing home. Not funny. Not funny. Here we go.
No, not funny. Not funny.
Not funny. Straight face. Claire Noland, a great-grandmother with dementia, was in critical condition in the hospital after being tasered early Wednesday by a senior constable who had been called out to the home by care staff to reports of a resident with a knife. Still not laughing. Okay.
Trying not to. Yeah, trying not to.
What do you mean trying not to? We're still not laughing, Bruiser. Still not laughing.
Well, it was steak night, and they're calling, the cops because an older lady has a steak knife.
Right. Peter Cotter, NSW Police Force Assistant Commissioner, attempted to explain the officer's actions at a news briefing on Friday after watching video of the incident captured by 2 police body cameras. Here's the quote. At the time she was tasered, she was approaching police. It's fair to say at a slow pace. No, don't laugh, Bruiser.
Try not to. Just picturing in my head that scene in Austin Powers. With the steamroller coming at the guy.
No. She had a walking frame, or a walker, that's the quote, but she had a knife. I can't take it any further as to what was going through anyone's mind when he used the taser, Cotter said. The community has been outraged by the events that took place at, I believe it is Yalambee Lodge in Cooma, a small town about 100 kilometers or 62 miles south of the national capital, Canberra, rather. Andrew Thaler, I'm trying very hard not to laugh here, because it's tragic. She died. Okay. It's very tragic.
Oh, she died. Okay. That is sad.
Yeah, that is sad. Andrew Thaler, a local community advocate, says Nolan's family, which includes 8 children and dozens of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, are taking turns to keep vigil by her bedside. I don't think there's going to be a recovery. Tasers take out bulls and fully grown men, and she's a slip of a woman, said Thaler, who is assisting the family, who have requested privacy as they deal with the events of the past few days. Nolan has dementia as well and had lived at the home for 5 years, Thaler said. She had good days and she had bad days, which is standard, he added, describing her as physically frail. The woman couldn't stand without a walking aid. She's not that strong. She's around 95 pounds and 5'2". This is an outrage. So how did it unfold? We'll try to wrap this up quickly so you realize how this happened. Police say they were called to the address around 4:15 a.m. on Wednesday. This is 4:15 in the morning, folks, on Wednesday, to reports of residents with a knife. 2 officers found Noland in her room with a knife in her hand. Cotter said during a briefing on Friday, it is fair to say that she was armed with that knife. The knife in question was a steak knife with a serrated edge that she had obtained from the kitchen area of the nursing home a couple of hours earlier. Police and paramedics negotiated with Nolan for a number of minutes, so they talked to her for quite a few minutes. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, no laughing, Bruiser, no laughing.
I'm not laughing. I have a perfect punishment.
Okay. So they urged her to drop the knife, Cotter said. But for whatever reason, Claire did not do that. She's 95 pounds. You could have just went up and shook the knife out of her hand.
Yeah, you could have distracted her with shiny keys while somebody grabbed the knife.
That's right. Claire approached the doorway where the police were at that stage, and the one officer discharged the taser.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Nolan fell to the ground and hit her head. Oh, the poor girl. The injury that she suffered as a result of hitting her head on the floor has rendered her bedridden at the moment. She remains in and out of consciousness. Video and audio of the incident was captured by 2 police body cameras, which Cotter said was confronting. I have seen it and I understand what I've seen, said Cotter, who said the footage would not be released because it's not in the public interest. Well, of course it's not.
Oh, yeah. We don't want to see an old lady dying.
Right. Exactly. Noland is a well-known member of the community and had attracted local media attention when she went skydiving to celebrate her 80th birthday.
Good for her. Living on the edge.
Yeah.
Doing something I'd never do.
She also did it again at 85.
Good for her.
Yeah. The officer who discharged his taser has not been identified beyond being a senior constable with 12 years of experience who has now been taken off duty. Jeez. Well, he should be permanently. Homicide detectives are involved because of the seriousness of the incident. Hopefully he gets charged. He would not speculate whether the officer who fired the taser would be charged. If a threshold is met where it changes from being a departmental issue into a criminal issue, we are certainly mature enough and transparent enough as an organization to do what has to be done. Cotter said tasers are generally used as a defensive tool when someone's life is threatened. The woman's 95 pounds.
With a walker.
And holding a steak knife.
What they need to do is make this guy go back and take his physical all over again. Because if he's afraid a 95-year-old woman with a walker is going to get the jump on him, he needs to find out what his physical abilities are.
She's not even a danger to a steak.
No.
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 Just stupid.
No, there is another way to handle that situation.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. So, yeah, that was your challenge today, to try not to laugh at that story, because initially it's kind of funny. But
it is, because it's a 95-year-old woman and a guy felt threatened by her.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know, did she get the jump on him? Like what?
She's in a walker. How's she going to get the jump on him?
Exactly.
Yeah. We go to Minneapolis for this next one. This is just plain stupid. Are you ready for this one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Check this one out. If you thought that one was stupid, this one's even stupider. A Minneapolis school employee was charged after a student found a bag with loaded guns. But it gets better. You ready for this?
Well, you know the drawer of the stolen toys, right? Like if you bring in toys and then know he's the teacher, so they put they take the toys away from you. You know, the fake teeth, the gum with ink on it, the fake vomit. They just throw it all in a drawer. Well, this was all the guns that kids bring to school. The teacher just confiscated them, threw them in a drawer.
Oh no, it's even better than that, Bruiser. I actually brought the automatic squirt gun, the battery powered squirt gun, which Mr. Dahl, my honors history teacher, told me his kids were going to enjoy greatly. Because he warned us last day of school, you bring it in, you use it, I'm going to take it, and you're never getting it back. And I spent like $20 on this awesome automatic it looked like a 9mm squirt gun. And he said, my kids are going to love this. Thank you, Mr. Dennis. And he took it from me. We go to Minneapolis, or we stay right where I am in this case. A Minneapolis elementary school staff member faces felony charges after a student discovered 2 loaded firearms in the school.
Oh, geez.
Now, you ready for this? Hennepin County prosecutors charged 20-year-old Derek Lee Lind with possession of a dangerous weapon on school property, negligent storage of loaded firearms, and carrying a firearm in a public place without a permit. How did it happen, you may ask? Well, according to court records, Minneapolis police officers responded to a call on April 23rd at Loring Elementary School after a student found a bag left on a table with 2 guns inside. Authorities said one of the handguns was reportedly stolen. The other had an auto sear switch attached to it. Both guns were loaded with a round in the chamber.
Why would you need an automatic? Okay. Sure.
Okay. Investigators looked at the school surveillance videos, which showed Lind getting out of his car with a black bag that matched the one left inside the school. He was seen walking around the school with the bag around his shoulder. Of course, why not?
He thought it was his gym bag. He didn't know it was his shooting bag.
Yeah, exactly. Mixed up his bags. He was not near the bag when the student found it, according to those charges. Lind allegedly acknowledged to a staff member that the bag was his, and he didn't want to leave it in the car because it didn't lock. So bring it in the school where it's safe.
Yeah, not leave it in your house where you can lock your house.
Yeah. The staff member told Lind he needed to leave since he wasn't allowed to bring guns into the school, and he became upset and trashed the room before exiting the school.
Because Billy over there, he can bring a gun. How come I can't?
Yeah, I guess. Lind was charged via warrant and is now in custody at Hennepin County Jail. He is scheduled to make his first court appearance here shortly. There you go. That's how smart we get sometimes here in Minneapolis.
If it's not the students, it's the teachers. What the hell?
That's right. This Next story qualifies. I meant to read that first Minneapolis story first, but I'm in my octogenarian set here in Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. This next story was sent to us the most this past week. So thank you to everybody who sent it to us, including Tom and a few other people. Evidently, everybody loves it when Grandma gets killed with a hammer, and then the guy who killed Grandma evidently is too lazy to clean it up, so he calls a maid service.
What, he couldn't afford Harvey Keitel from Pulp Fiction?
I guess not, no. A Florida man kills Grandma with a hammer and then calls a housekeeper to clean up the quote-unquote real mess, according to police. God, what are people coming to these days?
It's the movies. There's always the cleaner, and there's a TV show right now called The Cleaning Lady, which is she's a maid, but she's brought in to clean up crime scenes. Yeah. This guy just lives too much in TV land.
Sloppy, just sloppy. A Florida man who allegedly beat his grandmother to death with a hammer was caught after he asked his housekeeper to clean up the bloody crime scene. This, according to police. Anthony Michael Corrado, 34 years old, is accused of attacking the 82-year-old woman and severely beating his grandfather inside their Naples gated community home on Wednesday.
How do you bring this up to your housekeeper?
I have no idea.
Like, how does this conversation start? Like, oh, hey, Sue, I'm glad you're here today. Little bit extra messy. Try to do some DIY and hit Grandma's thumb repeatedly.
Yikes. Yeah, Grandma and Grandpa, not here anymore, but you'll see where they're at. You may have to clean them up. Just saying. They're a little messy themselves. On a bright note, there's only one of us now.
Hey.
You only have to clean up after one of us.
And I got rid of the bodies. He's got to clean up the blood and brain matter.
There you go. After allegedly bludgeoning his grandmother, Corrado called a housekeeper around 2:30 p.m. to help him clean a real mess. That's in quotes inside the Golden Gate Estates home, according to an arrest affidavit obtained by the Naples Daily News. A blood-soaked Corrado, which sounds like a Sopranos episode, reportedly led her through the blood-spattered home to a bedroom where his grandmother's mutilated corpse lay wrapped in a tarp.
So he didn't even change his clothes.
No. She also had a bag wrapped around her head. When the housekeeper tried to remove it, Corrado allegedly stopped her and said it would get blood everywhere, the documents state. The man then allegedly asked her to take the body out of the home. Oh, so she's got to do heavy lifting on top of everything else.
Yeah. Huh. I thought he at least would remove the bodies.
No. That's for the housekeeper to do as well.
Yes.
The housekeeper tried to convince Corrado to call the police, but then he reportedly refused, stating, "I'll go back to prison."
I ain't going back.
Yeah, I ain't going back there. I might have done the killing, but I ain't going back there. Under the guise of retrieving cleaning supplies from her car, the housekeeper escaped the bloody scene and flagged down a Collier County Sheriff's deputy. Oh, this guy's not a good-looking man at all. I got to show you his picture here, Bruiser.
Oh, I'll be right back. I got to get my cleaning supplies.
During that time, Corrado allegedly unleashed renewed violence on his grandfather, who had returned from a trip to the grocery store, so he wasn't even dead yet.
Oh, he was gone doing errands, came back, saw the missus, went to the grandson, like, what's up? He goes, I tried telling the housekeeper to clean it up.
Police found the brutalized man in another room in the house, wrapped in a blanket with severe head injuries. He was flown to a hospital in Fort Myers and is expected to survive.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Deputies found a bloody hammer on the kitchen countertop, and blood was sprayed on the walls and the floors of the home. Corrado was discovered standing outside the home, covered in blood from head to toe. The affidavit said splatter was on his shirt, shorts, boots, both of his shins, and his forehead.
Cut himself shaving.
Yeah, that's what it was. The alleged killer refused to talk with cops. Yeah, that Fifth Amendment.
Yeah.
That's something, isn't it?
I plead the fifth.
Yeah.
Can't prove it was me.
Nope. He was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and aggravated battery on a person over the age of 65. Police have not revealed a motive for the savage crime. My guess is psychopathy.
Yeah, he's got a screw loose.
And I'll tell you psychopathy by looking in his eyes, Bruiser.
Oh, yeah, he's crazy.
Look in his eyes.
He is off medication.
He's missing something upstairs. I'll just tell you that right now.
He's doing his best Richard Ramirez pose in that picture, too.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? You can tell he's got a hero there.
Yeah. That's what it was. He was watching the Netflix documentary on Ramirez.
That's right. Let's move on here, Bruiser. I'll tell you what. Sometimes you're playing around in the garage and you find one of Grandpa's World War II artifacts. Here's a clue. Don't pull the pin. If you pull the pin, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
Never pull the pin.
Exactly. And if you do, throw something.
Now, my own grandfather had one of those from World War II. And even though he said, hey, Timmy, this is a dud, it's a fake, I never believed it for a minute.
Yeah, you can't. You don't know.
No, I never pulled the pin, even though he said it was a dummy. A man is dead and teens are wounded when Granddad's old grenade exploded in an Indiana home.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
That one was a real one. As we said, a man is dead. His 2 teenage sons were wounded after a grenade they found among their grandfather's old belongings exploded in their Indiana home this past Saturday. According to the Lake County Sheriff's Department, someone pulled the pin on the explosive, causing it to detonate inside Lake of the Four Seasons residence around 6:30 p.m. That sounds so pleasant, doesn't it?
Who keeps a grenade from World War II?
My grandfather did. I just told you that.
Yeah, you did. But I'm just wondering why. Like, he could have so much more cool shit from World War II. Because decided to bring a grenade home for you? Little Timmy will love this.
No. Well, yeah, first of all, I wasn't born then, Bruiser. Second, it was real hard to get things home from World War II. You got to realize that a lot of times they would take things apart in pieces and they would ship it home. But, that
what
episode...
orifice did that grenade go in?
You'd be surprised. But a lot of times, did you ever see the episode of MASH where Radar took and shipped a Jeep home piece by piece? I think it was Radar.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually based on some truth. Okay. But a grenade was small and easy to ship.
True.
Okay. So, but it was a training grenade that my grandfather had. It was a dud.
Okay.
So it was easy to ship. And it was just something to have, to say,
When you're done with this, I got a really good grenade story for you.
Okay, we got to keep it short, though. It short. Okay.
Real short.
So when deputies arrived at the scene, they found an unresponsive man who was later pronounced dead. The man's 2 sons, 14 and 18, were taken to a local hospital with shrapnel wounds, according to the sheriff's department. The Porter County Bomb Squad also responded to determine whether there were additional explosive devices in the home. The Lake County Sheriff's Department's crime scene investigation unit and homicide detectives are investigating the blast. No other information was immediately available. Go ahead.
So, my good buddy, R.I.P. Jay Briscoe, was banned from flying into Texas because of a grenade.
Really?
He used to wear a dead grenade, like those pineapple grenades, as a necklace out for his ring entrance.
Oh, yeah.
And he tried to fly with it.
Ooh, not good.
when that goes through the X-ray screen, the X-ray techs, TSA kind of go,
oh, yeah.
Whoa. And he was trying to explain to him, no, the detonator's out of it. It's dead.
Yeah. They don't care.
They don't care.
No, that's just as good as when you put your luggage through a screen and you go, hey, look, a bomb. They don't like that either. Yeah, they frown on that. We get to the animal section of Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals.
I love the animals in these sections.
Yeah, we have an extensive animal section. Today, we're going to start with tortoises and turtles.
Okay.
I love turtles. We start off in Tampa, where a couple is arrested after St. Petersburg police find stolen tortoises, rare books, and comic books. I figured you liked this story, Bruiser.
Everything collectible.
That's right. Police say Joshua McCarty Thomas is also facing charges in connection to the theft of rare books at Haslam's Bookstore and Lighthouse Books.
I hope every comic was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic.
I think it probably was, yeah. 2 endangered Galapagos tortoises, rare books, and comic books went missing from locations across Florida. On Tuesday, a couple was arrested after police determined they sold some of the items on eBay and kept other valuables, including the rare reptiles, at a St. Petersburg home. Let's see here.
I guess they were going to keep a turtle. Florida's the best place to do it.
That kind of is, yeah. It kind of is. It says here, I've reached my 2 free article limit. This is the first time I've ever accessed it. Joshua McCarty Thomas was taken into custody after detectives serving a warrant discovered all of those missing items. I would tell you more, but we've hit our limit with the Tampa Bay Times.
Let's just say they had the whole run of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's right. Yeah.
An Easter Island rare book. And 2 Galapagos tortoises they called Raphael and Leonardo.
That's right.
And they were looking for 2 more tortoises and a rat.
That's right. That they were. Our second turtle story today is also taking place in Florida. A driver stops on a busy Florida highway for a turtle crossing the road and caused a multi-vehicle crash.
Oh, well, good for him for letting the turtle cross the road, but...
Well, according to the cops, no. No. You should never do this.
Really? I've done it before. I'm guilty of this.
Yeah?
I've actually gotten out and picked the turtle up and moved him across. I just have a soft spot for turtles.
I understand that, but this is a bad thing according to Florida authorities. You're not
I've been
supposed
here
to
in
do
North
this.
Carolina, so...
Yeah, they say you shouldn't do this. This is a bad thing.
Oh, I broke the law then.
Yeah. We go to, I believe it's Defuniak Springs, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah. A traffic jam over a turtle in the road caused a crash involving multiple vehicles, including a semi-truck on a highway in the Florida Panhandle on Tuesday. The crash happened Tuesday in Walton County after a driver stopped on US 331 to let the turtle cross the road.
Okay, I've never done it on a highway. I was on a side street.
Okay.
Highway, I'm sorry. The turtles has got a...
Yeah, you're done.
They're on their own.
Yep. That's an episode of Frogger we're all not wanting to see, but it happens.
Yeah.
So they stopped to let the turtle cross the road, according to authorities in Walton County. This had let's just say a very, very bad ending for the humans in this story. Residents and visitors alike should marvel at the many species that call Florida home, just preferably not in the middle of the road. The Walton County Sheriff's Office said in a Facebook post. Dash cam video was released by Walton County deputies after the crash to caution drivers against causing a road obstruction because of a reptilian obstruction. So you shouldn't do this. The video from a truck that was involved in the crash captures the moments the driver failed to brake in time and rear-ended at least 2 vehicles.
Oh, yeah, those semis don't stop fast.
No, they don't. Before it happened, several cars were seen on the dash cam footage stopped in the southbound lanes of US 331 near Defuniak Springs. While no ill intentions were meant, trying to avoid or assist an animal who has made its way onto a busy road can cause you or other drivers life-threatening injuries, WCSO said. Deputies said no one was seriously injured in the crash, and the turtle also survived, so yay!
The turtle was just looking for his 2 buddies that were just randomly kidnapped with a bunch of their Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics.
That's true. Although somewhere in there soup was made, I'm convinced. The sheriff's office added that the turtle was relocated to a pond where he will hopefully spend the rest of his days avoiding pavement of any kind. That was the statement from the...
He's just telling all his buddies, like, guess what I did?
I should give the sheriff one of these because that's a horrible dad joke, by the way. Another animal story for you. A DUI suspect in Colorado, by the way, this was sent in by a listener. A DUI suspect in Colorado reportedly tried to switch seats with his dog when pulled over by police.
Ziggy, we got an assignment.
This is just horrible. We go to Springfield, Colorado. It appears a man suspected of a DUI in Colorado was trying to get out of the charges by putting his dog behind the wheel of the car that he was driving.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The Springfield Police Department shared details of the odd incident on their Facebook page. According to police, the suspect was pulled over in the Springfield area on the south side of Colorado at about 11:30 on a Saturday night. The driver was reportedly driving 52 and a 30.
Oh, he was in a hurry.
Now, how's the dog going to reach the pedals to go 52 and a 30?
Very simple.
Simple?
Yeah, it's easy.
Really?
No.
Okay, yeah. The driver attempted to switch places with his dog, who was in the passenger seat, as the SPD officer approached and watched the entire process. Part of a post by Springfield Police reads, the male party then exited the passenger side of the vehicle and claimed he was not driving.
What's that, Ossifer? Is my dog going too fast, Ossifer? I'm sorry.
He is a speed hound.
I told him, you mind the law.
Actually,
Punish him when we get home.
Actually, he's part greyhound. There, you know what? We had one little miser this week that complained about this thing.
Well, then we should just do it more and more.
Should we? Should we just grind the gears on that fucking thing? Should we just...
Yeah, just like the dog did with his shifting.
The male party showed clear signs of intoxication. Really?
Ossifer, it's okay. My dog's Dale Earnhardt. It's okay.
I named him Dale Earnhardt so he could speed us home. And when asked about his alcohol consumption, the male party ran from the officer. The male party was apprehended quickly within about 20 yards of the vehicle.
I've had 1, 2. See you later.
I'd count backwards, but I'm too busy running forwards. Police add the suspect had 2 active warrants for his arrest out of Pueblo. They didn't identify the suspect in their post. Of course not, because he's so embarrassed.
The dog had 3 warrants.
Oh, see, I see what you did there. I'm not going to hit that again, by the way, because I think we've hit our limit.
Yeah.
And so did he. The suspect was charged with DUI, speeding, resisting arrest, and driving under suspension. Police provided an update stating the dog was given to an acquaintance of the driver to take care of while the party was in jail. The dog did not face any charges and was let go with just a warning.
The dog's statement was, The dog's statement was,
Oh, no, Bruiser. KKTV 11 News has reached out to Springfield Police for more on the case. What more are they going to say?
They really want to sit down with this dog.
Yeah, for real. For real. Another animal story for you. The hits just keep on coming.
Yeah?
Speaking of the hits just keep on coming, a man crashed into a bear while biking in Canada and is glad to be alive.
I didn't see it there, bear. Sorry.
How do you not see a bear there?
I have no idea.
And if you can't see a bear there, should you be on a bike? My God. A Canadian man T-boned a black bear while biking through a conservation reserve, suffering a fractured scapula, cardiac contusion, and bruised ribs, among other injuries.
How hard did he hit that bear?
What is he, Lance Armstrong? Was he taking off at the speed of sound?
Man, he must have went ass over a tea kettle, and that bear must have been made of like titanium or something.
30-year-old Kevin Milner of North Vancouver, British Columbia, was rounding a corner and heading downhill in the Lower Seymour Conservation Reserve on Tuesday when he spotted the bear and tried to cruise around him. Look at me, I can get around him. Woo! The second
I'm sorry, but if that's me, I'm stopping, turning around, and pedaling back uphill.
Yeah, I'm hitting the brakes and going, I think I'm going to let him go first.
Yeah, you have the right of way, sir.
Yep.
Would you like a bike?
Would you like a bike? You can do it on a bike if you can ride it. I see him do it in the circus all the time. The second I made that decision, he said he decided to run, and he ran right across the road right in front of me, and I smashed into him right behind his shoulder blade, Milner told North Shore News. I did a flip over him. I pretty much kissed the bear, and then I guess I flew through the air. No shit, Sherlock. That you did.
The bear just kept walking, going, what the fuck was that?
Well, that tickled. Milner landed hard on his side while the bear took off through the woods. He's lucky the bear didn't get pissed off and go after him.
I was going to say, that bear, like, he's lucky he didn't make that bear mad.
Yeah. Passing cyclists immediately stopped and helped him as opposed to stopping and laughing, which I probably would have done. 2 women cyclists concerned about his condition rode toward the edge of the reserve to get enough cell reception to call 911. While a third bystander who had been riding an e-bike stayed with Milner. Don't they charge by the minute for those or something?
I think so.
I don't know. It probably.
Nobody was worried about the bear?
I guess
like, hey,
not.
this bear might still be in the area.
Yeah. But the next arrival wasn't an ambulance or an EMS. It was the same bear Milner had just plowed into.
See?
Now it's getting good. He was like, oh, shit, dude, he's back. The bear's back, Milner said of remarks from the man keeping him company while help was on the way. That's when the guy soiled himself and ran. No, I'm just kidding. Man, those bears are built like a truck, Milner told the news outlet. I thought I was going to die. The bear, however, seemed unfazed by the bystanders tending to Milner, he said. He was kind of looking at me, really curious, kind of like, what's up with you, he recalled. Then the bear just started eating grass. He pretty much just carried on with his day. I guess.
The bear was just mildly annoyed by the situation.
If I were the bear, I would have went up and kicked him one more time just to give, for good measure.
Look where you're going, dork.
Yeah. As the minutes passed and his adrenaline began to wear off, Milner said he became impatient waiting for the help, noting he was spitting up blood and worried he may have suffered internal bleeding. He said he also couldn't lift his leg, let alone walk. Well, what are you getting impatient for?
Yeah, you can't do anything.
Yeah. Milner said he convinced the bystander to lend him his e-bike and help him ride to the entrance of the forest.
I gotta finish this leg, man. Come on.
Come on, man. I didn't.
My Fitbit says I just gotta get to the end of this course. Come on.
While they were leaving, he passed the young women who were trying to call 911 for him. BC Ambulance Service paramedics met him at the edge of the woods and took him to Lionsgate Hospital, where he was kept overnight for treatment. He suffered a fractured scapula, cardiac contusion, bruised ribs, road rash, and numbness as a result of the tumble. It feels like the whole left side of my torso went to the dentist, he said. God.
Well, that's your first mistake. You're going to the dentist for an elbow problem.
Milner, who has ridden his bike along the Seymour Valley Trailway his whole life, says his commute will likely change following the crash. Yeah, I'll start riding in the city. The reason I rode in the demonstration forest is to get away from the traffic, right? He said, but after hitting the bear, I mean, it's probably safer just riding with cars. I'm just really, really glad to be alive, he added. It's like the most Canadian North Vancouver thing that could ever happen.
You know why it's safer to ride with cars? Cars won't eat you.
That's right. Cars won't eat you. A few more stories left here on Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. We don't normally get political on the show.
No, we don't.
But this is just the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Okay.
So we're entering the realm of politics, folks. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're Democrat. I do care if you're George Santos. Have you heard this story?
This guy's an idiot.
Are you ready for this?
I'm not going to be surprised at all, because anytime someone says, have you heard about George Santos? It's followed by the most asinine thing ever.
Oh, it gets good. We'll leave this short and sweet. The headline says it all. George Santos has named himself campaign treasurer after he faces indictment for fraud and money laundering. That's right. His campaign treasurer quit. So he figured, who's a fine, upstanding young man who can handle the money in my campaign after I've been indicted for, money laundering and fraud? Well, me, I would make the perfect campaign treasurer.
This guy has told so many lies that he believes his own bullshit now.
When your own party doesn't like you, when your own party wants to see you gone.
Yeah.
Do you really think you should stick around?
Well, the thing is, too, okay, so, no politicians really tell the truth. But the blatant lies that he's telling it's not even you have to do any research to find out that he's lying. Like saying what he went to one school. That's a simple Google search. Class of whatever, his name. They're going to Google you, dude.
If you're ready for a good laugh, here's a statement. To ensure compliance upon the resignation, of his treasurer. He said, I was named as treasurer.
By who?
By himself.
Can you do that? Is that like giving yourself? That's like giving yourself your own nickname. Like, hey, from now on, call me Spike.
That's right. He says a treasurer must be appointed within 10 days of the resignation of the previous treasurer, he continued, and probably because he doesn't have any friends, he named himself treasurer. My intent is to operate above reproach. Try not to giggle too hard. We will continue to build our campaign around professionals with subject matter expertise. When was he a treasurer? He says, I have retained the professional services of a new treasurer to ensure the campaign moves forward in compliance. FEC records will reflect the update. He talks about himself in the third person.
Yeah.
Huh.
Is there a way to get negative votes?
Maybe. It says,
vote for this person, and then if anybody votes for this person, just automatically give it to this guy.
It says, while he has vowed to run for re-election, Santos has faced new calls to resign while he was recently indicted for fraud and money laundering. I can't think of a better treasurer to serve your campaign than one that's been convicted for fraud and not convicted, but indicted, rather. I keep saying convicted, but he's been indicted for fraud and money laundering. I'm just looking forward to the end of the book here. That's all.
Yeah.
Let's move on to a cheerier story. A Sonoma County sheriff's wife has been arrested on a DUI charge, but here's the funny part, Bruiser. She was in a car that's known for self-driving at the time.
Ah, okay.
Mm-hmm. We go to Santa Rosa, California, where the wife of Sonoma County Sheriff Eddie Ingram was arrested on suspicion of drunk driving after crashing into a house and injuring a person in the home. Ingram said on social media, last night my wife was involved in a DUI crash. Her car hit a house causing damage, and the one person inside the home was injured. Ingram said in a Facebook message. I don't know that you should be proud of that, but
No, that's not something you're like proud of. Like, I'm proud my wife graduated college. I'm not proud she crashed into a house and hit somebody.
He says, as was appropriate, she was arrested and is facing DUI charges in the incident, and it's being handled by the Santa Rosa Police Department. Now, the woman who was hurt by the crash told KTVU about what happened. 58-year-old Lori Johnson said she was sitting in her recliner in the living room of her Santa Rosa home watching soap operas when just about before 1 a.m. she heard the sound of a car engine and then headlights came crashing through her wall. I'm still in kind of shock, said Johnson. There's this massive, massive boom. My television is a 75 to 80 inch TV. Must be nice.
Wow.
Yeah, coming towards me.
Wow, my TV's getting bigger.
Yeah, that looks like 100 inches now.
Best Buy didn't tell me it would do this.
With debris and 2x4s with nails also coming at me. I'm pinned to the chair with my little dog on me just screaming. Well, that dog isn't very good then, is it? A Tesla Model 3 crashed into the front of her house. The driver was identified as 47-year-old Natasha Whittinghill, who was the wife of Ingram. Now, Ingram wrote on Facebook, as a husband, I'm greatly concerned about my wife's well-being. As a citizen and sheriff, I'm also concerned about the well-being of the person inside the home who suffered injuries. Johnson was taken by ambulance to the hospital. She said she hurt her knees and has cuts all over her body from shards of glass and debris. A neighbor's doorbell video captured the moment that the Tesla jumped the curb and flew into the house. Johnson said watching that video has been difficult. It kind of puts in perspective how lucky I am because she didn't stop, said Johnson. She said Whittinghill was visibly intoxicated and got out of her vehicle when neighbors came over to help. She got belligerent with them and fell into the bushes, said Johnson. Santa Rosa police were called to the scene. Lieutenant Christopher Maharin said officers gave the driver a field sobriety test. There was no request for special treatment. She was booked into the jail, said Maharin. He said officers did test Whittinghill's blood alcohol level, but said getting the results could take a couple of weeks. The case will then be handed over to the district attorney's office. All of these cases, we treat them just like we treat any other citizen involved in a DUI collision, said Maharin. This individual was found to be probable cause to be arrested for felony DUI. There you go. Interesting.
The worst part about it is the lady didn't get to finish her stories.
That's right. She never got to finish her stories.
She had to wait till 1 a.m. to watch them anyways.
That's right. Two more stories here on Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. This one, by the way, both of them not safe for work. NSFW. So you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to turn down your listening device if you're at work, or put in your earbuds if you're around the children. So here we go, folks. This first one, let's just say, if you can't keep it in your pants, keep it on the church altar.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Just slap that hog up there.
That's not what I meant. Not like that. I'm just talking about sometimes we all have to run to the bathroom quite quickly. We go to Ohio, Bruiser. Not the hog. That's not what I meant. Slap that hog out there.
Okay, just don't go in the holy water.
Oh, God, no. Well, sometimes you do need to bring down the smell, but not like that. Jeez. A woman is defecated on a church altar in Ohio. The 26-year-old Ohioan faces felony for desecration of a hospital chapel.
She went full, like, I'm just thinking pee. No, she went, like, she jumped up and went, this is what I think your altar.
Yeah, pretty much. An Ohio woman has been charged with desecration after she allegedly defecated on a church altar, according to a police report. According to a criminal complaint, Laura Miniard, age 26, went into the chapel at Cincinnati's Good Samaritan Hospital. You're not that good of a Samaritan if you won't let me crap on your altar. That was on Saturday, and defecated on the altar. Miniard allegedly used a fabric runner on an altar to wipe herself.
Oh, geez.
Now that is graphic. Miniard, who lives in a Cincinnati suburb, probably not anymore. My guess is the welcome wagon got rid of her quickly. Then took a picture from the chapel and smeared feces on the table of altar. Miniard was arrested for desecrating a place of worship and booked into the county jail on the felony count. Court filings do not reveal a motive for the alleged desecration. I don't think she had to go that bad. There was probably a restroom right down the hall.
Yeah. That's a hate crime too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yep. While bond for Miniard is initially set at $2,500, it appears she was released from custody on her own recognizance.
They gave her a lifelong supply of Depends.
That's right. Miniard is next scheduled to appear in Hamilton County Municipal Court on May 25th. It's coming up here shortly. And finally, on Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals today, are you ready for this one, Bruiser? It's involved. When I say involved, I mean involved, if you know what I mean. Texas nuns sue a bishop after he accuses the Mother Superior of having sex with a priest.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Not the sex I was expecting.
No, we're getting into it now, if you're ready for this. A group of Carmelite nuns, as opposed to the sugar-based nuns, which are just a real simple sugar, accused a Texas bishop of pure evil after he shut down their monastery over allegations that their Mother Superior had sex with a priest. It gets better from here, folks. The Arlington-based, I believe it is DeKalst Carmelite nuns. You gotta really do the caramel over a slow fire. I believe is the way it's done.
You don't want to burn it.
No, yeah, so you don't burn it, like Bruiser said. Filed a lawsuit against Bishop Michael Olson of the Fort Worth Diocese after he ordered the seizure of computers and a phone and barred priests from conducting mass at their monastery over allegations that the Mother Superior Teresa Agnes Gerlich broke her vow of chastity. According to the lawsuit filed in Tarrant County Court, Olson burst into the monastery last month and began interrogating Gerlich over the alleged affair. The grilling came immediately after the nun, who uses a wheelchair, that's right, had undergone a surgical procedure and was still under the effects of general anesthesia and pain medication, including fentanyl. The diocese says she admitted to the affair, but the sister's attorney, Matthew Bobo, said in a statement to Catholic News Agency earlier this week that Gerlich was under heavy medication from a procedure and does not recall what she had admitted. Oh,
you can't blame the drugs for that. Come on now.
That's right.
Maybe she was just saying her deepest, darkest fantasies.
I don't know. They are making it sound like she had some sexual liaison affair with another priest and that it did not happen. Bishop Olson and his agents are abusing their power, inflicting moral violence and psychological distress on the plaintiffs, and the sisters are undertaking an illegal, unholy, unwarranted, explicit, and systematic assault upon the sanctity and autonomy of the plaintiffs and the sisters, Bobo said. This week, the Diocese of Fort Worth posted a statement on its website saying the Reverend Mother had violated her vow of chastity with a priest from outside the Diocese of Fort Worth. It filed a response to the nuns' lawsuit Thursday, calling the matter an ecclesiastical dispute that has no place in a civil court, according to the Catholic News Agency. And with that, we are done with dumb crimes and stupid criminals. And with that, we have to wrap up today's program. Tomorrow on the show, Supernatural News with myself and Beer City Bruiser. Bruiser, got any quick notes for us before we leave today?
No. Tune in tomorrow. Come listen to us and have a good time. Rim shots all around.
Rim shots all around. That's right. Tomorrow on the show, Supernatural News from Beer City Bruiser. I'm Tim Dennis. Join us again tomorrow for that show. Again, Fred Litwin is our guest for today. Pick up his book. We have the link in the description of this program. We'll see you tomorrow for Supernatural News and Darkness Radio. Thank you very much for listening to the best in true crime talk radio. This has been True Crime Tuesday.